Dear Pistons fans, please shut the up. What is going on? I want to welcome you from Half Court. I am Sean Murphy, blah, blah, blah. Today, we got to have a conversation. Now, if you somehow were not on the app called Twitter last night, you would have thought that the Pistons were going through the apocalypse because everyone was flipping out going,
"Oh my god, this team fucking sucks."
Which, yeah, isn't that the point? In today's video, I want to have an honest conversation about where the Pistons are at, where we should expect them to be, and why exactly we're struggling out of the gate. Because there are some clear reasons as to why the Pistons are not winning basketball games right now, and they are all completely understandable. I think that the expectations that we set for this team going into this season were bonkers, and I think that you should agree. And before we get into why exactly that is the case, you better hit that subscribe button, because 4 days a week we are talking about all things NBA basketball on this channel. 2 videos and 2 podcasts a week, pretty hard to beat, pretty great content. Hit that subscribe button. But with that, let's get into today's video. So the first thing I want to talk about as to why the Detroit Pistons are struggling is the most obvious reason, and that is because of our schedule. Because, oh my god, our schedule to start the season is crazy. If I were to tell you that we were not able to beat the Chicago Bulls twice, the Atlanta Hawks once, the Philadelphia 76ers, or the Brooklyn Nets, you better say, yeah, that makes sense. Well, guess what? Those are all of our losses, which, by the way, if you watch these losses, the majority of them were actually pretty competitive. Our home opener against Chicago, we only lost by 6. We did lose by 15 the next game and only score 82 points in Chicago. However, there were stretches where the Detroit Pistons were very much still in that game. On top of that, we only lost to the Philadelphia 76ers by 8. And there was a lot of things to look at from the Atlanta Hawks game that were pretty promising, namely the play of Killian Hayes in that game, who started out the season really rough in his first 2 games. Fans were questioning whether or not he was a bust. Now, a game later, we're asking, why isn't Killian getting more minutes? Weren't you motherfuckers just calling this guy a bust 2 days ago? Now look, don't get me wrong, I completely understand rebuilds are no fun, and we want to watch this team go out and get some wins and possibly even make a playoff run. However, if those are your expectations going into this season, and if that's how you expected us to come out of the gate against this schedule, well, guess what? I'm sorry, but you were wrong, because this is a really difficult opening schedule for any team, let alone one of the youngest teams in the NBA. So that is one of the reasons why the Detroit Pistons are struggling. Another reason why the Detroit Pistons are struggling is because of their historically terrible three-point shooting. Currently, the Pistons rank 30th in the league, having the lowest three-point percentage in a season where we are seeing historically low three-point shooting percentages. Right now, the Detroit Pistons are currently shooting 28% from the 3. And I have news for you, that's not going to continue. When you're shooting 34 three-pointers a game and only making about 9 on average, you're not going to succeed, especially when you're playing against the top of the league. And let's not forget either that last night, playing against the Brooklyn Nets are able to shoot 65% from the field, which they're not going to do every night, even as a great NBA team, especially against a great defensive team like the Detroit Pistons, who does give other teams really difficult times while they are playing. Speaking of shooting woes that are not going to last, let's look at Jeremy Grant. Jeremy Grant is currently averaging 16 points a game, 35% shooting, and 25% from the 3. Knowing Jeremy Grant, that is most certainly not going to continue. In fact, if you look at his best game that he played in the season, which we'll get into why it was his best game of the season in just a second, he actually shot 50% from the field. When Jeremy Grant has help on the court, when he has other people that are offensive threats that other defenders are actually focusing on, he is a much better scorer. And when he is the number 1 option, getting absolutely suffocated with almost no help on the court, obviously he's going to struggle. Even Saddiq Bey, who was setting records for rookies in three-point shooting last year, is only shooting 31% from the 3. So, all around you have a team that is struggling to make threes against really good basketball teams. That is not exactly a shocker, and I can guarantee that these shooting woes are eventually going to even out. There is no way that Saddiq Bey is only going to shoot 31% from the 3. There is no way that Jeremy Grant is only going to shoot 25% from the 3. That just doesn't make any fucking sense. Also, before we get into our next piece and the biggest reason as to why the Detroit Pistons are struggling, can we just stop talking about rotations for, like, I don't know, 5 seconds? Listen, we've played 5 games so far. I understand if you don't love some of our minutes, and you can make some genuine criticisms. I had a great conversation with Eli Bashy on Twitter, by the way, go check him out, last night about some of Dwayne Casey's rotations and what some of the criticisms were. Now, you can look and say, okay, well, last night in the late of the third quarter, there was a lineup of Corey Joseph and a ton of bench players that were playing, and the Nets were able to go on a run, which I can look at that and you can go, yeah, that's fair. However, this lineup that's going to be playing in the fourth quarter is not going to be the same lineup that's going to be playing in the fourth quarter later in the season, as our bench is primarily a lot of veterans and our starters are a ton of young players. When you look at these veterans, they are really not affected by playing fourth quarter minutes. They have been there, done that. They have been in the league for a few years. So for them, it's not as much of high pressure basketball, especially when you're looking at a guy on the Detroit Pistons like Killian Hayes, who is already struggling with his confidence. You want a guy who is struggling and wavering in confidence, that needs to have the confidence just to take jump shots right now. You want him to play in the most high pressure minutes and situations that you can possibly ask a player to play in the game. It just doesn't make sense. And now for the third and final reason as to why the Detroit Pistons are currently struggling, and it is because, drum roll please, absolutely no shocker, it's because they're missing their guy named Cade Cunningham. Now, Cade Cunningham did come back and play a home game against the Orlando Magic, where, by the way, the Detroit Pistons did win, despite Cade Cunningham struggling to shoot from the floor. He was only able to make 1 of 8 attempts, and he did seem to struggle on the offensive end. However, everything else that he did on the court showed why he is the number 1 pick and why he is a perfect fit for the Detroit Pistons. It was clear when watching the game that the Pistons were simply a better team when Cade Cunningham was on the basketball court, that there was better ball movement, that the backcourt of Killian Hayes and Cade Cunningham did show a lot of promise, and on top of that, defenders were focusing more primarily on Cade Cunningham, opening up guys like Jeremy Grant and Sadiq Bey to attack and have better numbers on the offensive end. Jeremy Grant had his most efficient game of the season, shooting 50% from the field, and it was clear that he was not nearly as swarmed as he was against other teams like the Chicago Bulls, like the Philadelphia 76ers, and like the Brooklyn Nets. Now, don't get me wrong, Cade Cunningham isn't going to come in and fix everything. He's the number 1 overall pick, yes, but he is still a rookie, and he's going to need time, especially with a month where he's probably going to be on minute restrictions and more than likely not going to be playing back-to-backs for quite a few weeks, reported by the likes of Rod Beard and James Edwards III. However, that doesn't mean that we can't look at the small sample size that we've had so far and to make the conclusion that the Detroit Pistons are still a better team with him on the court. That doesn't mean that the Detroit Pistons can't thrive with him in the helm, with him getting more touches, with him getting scoring, and also with him helping with the ball movement and the passing and our offense running smoother. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm not arguing that the Detroit Pistons are a playoff team. In fact, I'm arguing that if you think that the Detroit Pistons are a playoff team, you're on crack, because respectfully, that is not what the plan is, and that hasn't been the plan for quite a while. Dwayne Casey and Troy Weaver have even said that this is all about restoring. Opening night of the Pistons season, they were giving away t-shirts that said restore. And that is still the primary messaging that the Detroit Pistons are giving us, which means that they're still restoring, which means we are still rebuilding, which means we are still losing. And that's okay. Now, don't get me wrong, I want us to win a championship as badly as all you do. One of my favorite childhood memories is that 03-04 Detroit Pistons team, was that 04-05 NBA Finals run, was all those Eastern Conference Finals runs. That runs deep in my blood. However, we have to remember that that takes time. We have had about 12 years now of mediocrity and bullshit at the helm of the Detroit Pistons, and this is the first time that we're doing it right. So why, in the one time that we're beginning to actually make good decisions, that we're actually being intelligent with our assets, that we're actually setting up our players for success in the future, are we trying to get this to up? Now, don't get me wrong, sure, we can have a conversation at some point about the likes of Dwayne Casey as to whether or not he's going to be the coach that is going to lead us to an NBA championship. That is a fair discussion to have in 4 years. But for right now, if you really think that this roster is supposed to be a playoff team and that Dwayne Casey is supposed to get these guys into the first or even second round of the NBA playoffs, you are out of your mind. And to think anything else is just simply stupid. And if you think that Dwayne Casey wouldn't have won a championship in Toronto with Kawhi Leonard on his roster and no LeBron James in the Eastern Conference to bother him, you're out of your mind too. In conclusion, all I ask is that we remember why we're going through this process. I ask that you remember all the years of mediocrity, all the years of 8th seed first round sweeps that we have gone through, all of the players that we've seen come through the Detroit Pistons system, all of the times that we've tried to rush winning. That cannot be rushed, nor should it. So, what I'm saying is, let's have fun. Let's watch this team grow. Let's watch this team make mistakes. Let's watch this team thrive. Let's watch this team begin to learn how to win, and let's celebrate that. Because that is what this season is supposed to be. This is going to feel like last year. And the message that I want to convey is that that's okay. And the reason why that's okay is because we have Cade Cunningham, we have Killian Hayes, we have Sadiq Bey, we have Isaiah Stewart, we have Jeremy Grant. We have a roster full of promising young talent that we did not have a year and a half ago. So now, let us enjoy it. Let us continue to restore, and let us hope that this season can lead potentially to another top 5 pick, if not another promising draft asset. And then in a couple of years, we can be looking at this team as some of these guys begin to sprout, and we can watch some of these guys begin to actually blossom, and then we can talk about winning a little bit more seriously. My prime example of this is the Milwaukee Bucks. Giannis Antetokounmpo was a project from day one coming into the league. He eventually had to be given time to grow, to make mistakes, to lose games, to develop as a player, and eventually he was able to lead that team to an NBA championship, but that didn't come without its hardships. The Denver Nuggets had to watch the likes of a Nikola Jokic thrive and develop and grow in their system to become a juggernaut in the Western Conference. These kinds of projects take time, and if we don't give them the time, we could be putting unnecessary pressure and also affecting the ability for this team to succeed. So let's not do that. What have you thought of the Detroit Pistons so far this season? I would love to know your thoughts in the comment section down below, but that is going to be doing it this time. Thank you so much for watching, and I will catch you next time from Half Court. Be sure to subscribe. Calm down.